The pills was wearing off when my brother Kane decided to crack the joke that would change everything. "Hell, Brandon, I should just borrow Tasha for a while," he said, leaning against my hospital bed with that shit-eating grin he'd perfected in high school. "You can't exactly perform your husbandly duties with those stitches, right?" Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Tasha giggled. Actually giggled, like some teenage girl getting attention from the quarterback. My wife of 8 years reduced to schoolgirl giggles over my brother's tasteless humor while I lay there with my abdomen carved up like a Thanksgiving turkey. "Real classy, Kane," I muttered, but something cold settled in my stomach that had nothing to do with the surgery. The way she looked at him, the way she'd been looking at everyone except me lately, it was like watching puzzle pieces fall into place in the worst possible picture. I'm Brandon Hayes, 37 years old, retired cop turned security consultant in this godforsaken corner of Maine where the lobster boats outnumber the brain cells. 3 weeks ago, I'd been rushed into emergency surgery for a burst appendix that nearly eliminated me. 3 weeks of lying in this bed, watching my wife transform from the woman who used to bring me coffee in the morning to someone who checked her phone more than she checked on me. "I'm just saying," Kane continued, unaware of the intense look I was giving him. "Tasha's got needs, you know? And she's looking real good these days. All that personal training is paying off." She was looking good. Too good. The kind of good that comes from having something to look good for, and I was starting to suspect it wasn't me. "Maybe you should head home, Kane," I said, my voice carrying that flat cop tone that used to make suspects nervous. "I'm sure you've got somewhere else to be." After he left, Tasha busied herself fluffing pillows that didn't need fluffing and avoiding eye contact. Her phone buzzed every few minutes, and each time she'd glance at it with this little smile that made my chest tighten. "Who keeps texting you?" I asked. "Just clients. You know how it is?" She shrugged, but her fingers were already flying over the screen. "I've got to build up my personal training business while you're recovering." Right. The business she'd started 6 months ago, around the same time she'd begun working out like she was training for the Olympics and buying clothes that cost more than our mortgage payment. "Which clients work out at midnight?" I asked, because that's when she'd been coming home lately, smelling like expensive cologne that sure as hell wasn't mine. "Brandon, don't be paranoid. I'm doing evening sessions because that's when people are available. Some of us have to work, you know." Some of us have to work, like I hadn't spent 15 years as a cop in this town, dealing with the kind of scum that would make her precious gym clients wet themselves. Like the security consulting business I'd built wasn't paying for her designer workout clothes and whatever else she was spending money on. After she left that evening, another client consultation, I called Victor Voss, my old partner from the force who'd gone private investigator after taking a bullet in the shoulder 5 years back. "Vic, I need a favor." "Jesus, Brandon, you sound awful. Shouldn't you be resting?" "I'll rest when I'm gone. Right now, I need you to keep an eye on Tasha for me." There was a pause. Victor had been a cop long enough to know what that request meant. "You sure about this, buddy? Sometimes it's better not to know." "I'm sure. And Vic, be thorough." 2 days later, he called back with photos that made my surgical scars feel like paper cuts compared to what was happening in my chest. Tasha and Derek Leland wrapped around each other on the dock behind his lakeside mansion. Derek Leland, who owned half the businesses in town and had the kind of money that made people forget he was a smug piece of shit with a wife and 2 kids. Derek Leland, who'd made a point of visiting me in the hospital to check on a fellow community member while he was screwing my wife. The photos were time-stamped clear. Tuesday night, when she told me she was training Mrs. Patterson for her daughter's wedding. Thursday afternoon, when she'd said she was at the gym doing inventory. Saturday morning, when she'd claimed she was running errands. I stared at the images until my eyes burned. Tasha's gym bag sitting by Derek's bedroom window. Her car parked behind his house like she belonged there. His hands on her body like she was his property. That's when I realized the morphine hadn't been masking pain. It had been masking rage. Pure, crystalline rage that was now flowing through my system better than any drug the hospital had given me. I'd spent my career catching cheaters, liars, and thieves. Now I was married to one. But here's the thing about being a cop for 15 years. You learn patience. You learn to plan. And you learn that the best revenge isn't hot, it's ice cold and served with a smile. Time to remind this town why they used to cross the street when they saw me coming. Getting out of bed felt like being stabbed all over again, but I'd endured worse. The stitches pulled with every step as I made my way to the closet, looking for clothes that would let me blend into the shadows like the old days. Victor met me at the marina at 11 p.m., shaking his head when he saw me limping toward his beat-up Ford. "You look like hell, Brandon." I feel worse, but that's not going to stop me from seeing this for myself. The photos weren't enough. The photos were evidence. Now I want to watch the crime in progress. We parked behind the bait shop with a clear view of Derek's lakeside house. The place was a monument to new money, all glass and steel jutting out over the water like some architectural middle finger to the working-class neighborhood across the bay. Lights were on in the bedroom, and Tasha's Honda was parked right next to Derek's silver Porsche. "How long have you known?" Victor asked, passing me a thermos of coffee laced with something stronger. Part of me probably knew for months. The other part didn't want to believe my wife was capable of this level of betrayal. I took a sip, feeling the whiskey burn away some of the cold. "She used to be different, Vic. When we got married, she was happy with our little house, our quiet life. Then something changed. Money changes people. It wasn't just money. It was status. Derek represents everything she thinks she deserves. The big house, the fancy car, the social connections. I'm just the blue-collar ex-cop who's holding her back." As if summoned by my words, Derek's front door opened. Tasha emerged first, adjusting her clothes and looking around nervously. Even from a distance, I could see the satisfied smile on her face. Derek followed, pulling her back for one more kiss before she walked to her car. "I've seen enough," I said, but Victor grabbed my arm as I started to get out. "What are you planning, Brandon?" "Nothing that'll get me arrested." That's not an answer. I looked at my old partner, this man who'd saved my life more times than I could count, and told him the truth. I'm going to destroy them both. Methodically, completely, and with a smile on my face. They want to play games? Fine. But they are about to learn they picked the wrong opponent. After Victor dropped me off, I spent the rest of the night planning. By morning, I had a list of Derek's vulnerabilities. His controlling wife, Elaine, who monitored his every move, his business partners who valued their reputations above all else, and his pathological need to be seen as the town's golden boy. Tasha's weaknesses were even easier to catalog. Her desperate need for social acceptance, her new personal training business that depended entirely on word of mouth, and her complete ignorance of how quickly small-town gossip could destroy a reputation. The first move had to be subtle, something that would rattle them without revealing my hand. I waited until the next evening, when I knew they'd be together. The marina was deserted except for a few fishermen preparing for the early morning run. Derek's Porsche sat in the parking lot like a silver beacon of arrogance. The key I'd lifted from his jacket during his hospital visit worked perfectly. I slipped inside and placed a rotten lobster on the passenger seat, along with a note. "Something smells fishy around here." Then I took my house key and carved "cheater" into the paint on the driver's side door, each letter deep enough to require a complete repaint job. I was halfway back to my car when the security guard rounded the corner, flashlight sweeping the parking lot. Hey you!" My surgical scars screamed in protest as I broke into a run, weaving between the boats and equipment scattered around the marina. The guard was younger and faster, but I knew every inch of this place from my cop days. I ducked behind a storage shed, pressed myself against the wall, and waited as his footsteps pounded past. My heart was hammering against my ribs by the time I made it back to my car, but for the first time in weeks, I felt alive. This was better than morphine, better than physical therapy, better than lying in that bed feeling sorry for myself. This was war, and I was finally fighting back. I was unlocking my front door when I noticed the envelope on the ground. No postmark, no return address, just my name written in block letters. Inside was a photograph of me at the marina, taken with a telephoto lens. On the back, someone had written, "Next time, try a better disguise." I stared at the image. Someone had been watching me watch them. Someone knew I knew, and they were playing their own game. The question was, who? I thought about Derek's smug smile during his hospital visit, the way he'd lingered just a little too long, asked just a few too many questions about my recovery timeline. Had he suspected I was onto him? Was this his way of letting me know he was 2 steps ahead? Or was it Tasha? My wife, who'd lived with a cop long enough to pick up a few tricks about surveillance and counter-surveillance. Maybe she'd been watching me as carefully as I'd been watching her. Either way, the message was clear. They knew I was coming for them. Good. Let them know. Let them lie awake at night wondering what I'd do next, when I'd strike, how far I was willing to go. Because the truth was, I was just getting started. And unlike them, I had nothing left to lose. The next morning brought Tasha's performance of the concerned wife, complete with homemade breakfast and worried glances at my pale complexion. She was good. I had to give her that. If I hadn't seen those photos, hadn't watched her kissing another man 12 hours earlier, I might have believed the act. "You look tired, honey. Are you sleeping okay?" "Like a baby," I lied, cutting into the eggs she'd prepared. They tasted like cardboard, but I forced myself to eat while she fluttered around the kitchen, checking her phone every 30 seconds. I've got a busy day today, 3 new clients, plus I need to stop by the gym to update some equipment. Which gym? I asked casually. She paused, coffee mug halfway to her lips. The usual one, Downtown Fitness. Another lie. Victor had confirmed that Downtown Fitness had been closed for renovations all week. She was meeting Derek somewhere else, probably his house again, and didn't even have the creativity to come up with a believable cover story. Maybe I'll stop by later, surprise you. No. The word came out too fast, too sharp. She caught herself, softened her voice. I mean, you should be resting, doctor's orders, remember? After she left, I called Victor again. I need you to follow her today. And Vic, I want to know everywhere she goes, everyone she talks to, everything she does. Brandon, maybe you should consider just confronting her directly. All this surveillance. Would you confront a suspect before you had enough evidence to make the charges stick? He sighed. No. Then trust me to know what I'm doing. But the truth was, I wasn't sure what I was doing anymore. The photograph had rattled me more than I wanted to admit. Someone was playing a deeper game than simple adultery, and I needed to understand the rules before I could win. The answer came that afternoon when Victor called with an update that changed everything. Brandon, you're not going to believe this. I followed Tasha to Derek's house like you expected, but there was someone else there. A woman I didn't recognize at first, so I ran the plates on her car. And? Jenna Morrison. Does that name mean anything to you? Jenna Morrison, Tasha's best friend from the gym. Jenna Morrison, who I'd arrested 3 years ago for dealing steroids to high school athletes. The charges had been dropped on a technicality, but her reputation in town was ruined. She'd blamed me for destroying her life, sworn she'd get revenge someday. She's there now. Was there for 2 hours. Left about 10 minutes before Tasha came out. Brandon, I think we're looking at something bigger than just an affair. I hung up and stared at the wall, pieces of a larger puzzle clicking into place. Jenna had been encouraging Tasha's gym obsession, introducing her to better clients, pushing her to upgrade her lifestyle. She'd been the one suggesting Tasha deserved more than what I could provide, and she'd been the one with access to Tasha's schedule, her phone, her car keys. She could have taken that photograph at the marina. She could have been orchestrating this entire thing as payback for the arrest that ruined her life. The affair wasn't just about Derek and Tasha. It was about destroying me, and Jenna was pulling the strings. 2 could play that game. That evening, I drove to the Blue Boy, the dive bar where Derek liked to hold court with his business associates. The place reeked of stale beer and failed dreams, but the drinks were strong and the owner minded his own business. Derek was holding court at his usual corner table, regaling a group of local contractors with some story about his latest business triumph. He looked up when I walked in, and I saw something flicker across his face. Surprise, maybe, or guilt. But it was gone so fast I might have imagined it. Brandon Hayes, he called out, loud enough for the entire bar to hear. Shouldn't you be home resting? Couldn't sleep, I said, making my way to the bar. Funny thing about pain medication? Sometimes it keeps you awake instead of putting you under. I ordered a whiskey, neat, and felt Derek's eyes on my back. After a few minutes, he excused himself from his table and joined me at the bar. How are you feeling, buddy? That was some scary stuff with your appendix. I'm surviving. Though I have to say, it's interesting how supportive the community has been. Tasha especially has been working overtime to keep my spirits up. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. She's a good woman. You're lucky to have her. Funny you should say that. She mentioned you've been helping her expand her personal training business. Just offering some advice. Small business development, networking opportunities. You know how it is? I do know how it is, I said, turning to face him fully. I know exactly how it is, Derek. For just a moment, his mask slipped. I saw the calculation behind his eyes, the quick assessment of how much I knew and how dangerous I might be. Well, he said, tossing a 20 on the bar, I should get going. Early morning tomorrow. You take care of yourself, Brandon, and maybe focus on getting better instead of worrying about things that don't concern you. After he left, I sat there nursing my whiskey and planning my next move. The direct approach wasn't going to work. Derek was too smart, too careful. But everyone had pressure points, and I was about to start pressing them. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. Elaine Leland, Derek's wife. We'd met at a few community events over the years, and she'd always struck me as the type of woman who kept very close tabs on her husband's activities. Time to give her something new to keep tabs on. The text I sent was simple. Thought you should know Derek has been spending a lot of time at the marina lately. Might want to ask him about his new boat. Derek didn't have a boat, but Elaine didn't know that, and by the time she finished interrogating him about his mysterious maritime activities, he'd be too rattled to think straight. Phase 1 of Operation Payback was complete. Now things were about to get interesting. The explosion came faster than I expected. I was barely awake the next morning when my phone started ringing. Victor's name flashed on the screen, and I could hear shouting in the background before I even answered. "Brandon, you need to get down to the gym. Now." "What's happening?" "Elaine Leland showed up about 10 minutes ago. She's tearing the place apart looking for your wife, screaming about boats and affairs, and threatening to call her lawyer." I was already reaching for my clothes. "Where's Tasha?" "Locked in the office with Derek, trying to figure out how his wife found out about them. This is about to get very public, very fast." By the time I arrived at Downtown Fitness, which, despite Tasha's claims, had reopened from renovations the day before, a crowd had gathered outside. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see Elaine Leland in full attack mode, her perfectly manicured finger jabbing at Derek's chest while Tasha cowered behind him. "You lying piece of shit!" Elaine's voice carried clearly through the glass. "I know about the house, about the late-night meetings, about everything." Derek was trying to calm her down, his hands raised in surrender, but Elaine was beyond reason. She spun around and spotted Tasha, her eyes narrowing to laser points of fury. "And you," she hissed, advancing on my wife. "You pathetic little homewrecker. Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" The slap echoed through the gym like a gunshot. Tasha staggered backward, her hand flying to her cheek, tears streaming down her face. The small crowd outside pressed closer to the windows, phones appearing to record the drama. I should have felt satisfaction watching my cheating wife get what she deserved. Instead, I felt something darker, more complex. This was my revenge, my manipulation that had led to this moment, and seeing it play out made me realize how far I'd already fallen. Derek tried to step between the women, but Elaine shoved him aside with surprising strength. $30,000, she screamed at Tasha. $30,000 of my money you helped him waste on jewelry and hotel rooms and whatever else you needed to spread your legs for a married man. The number hit me like a physical blow. $30,000, more than I made in 6 months of security consulting. No wonder Tasha had been buying new clothes, upgrading her equipment, acting like money was no object. "Elaine, please," Derek was saying. "Let's discuss this privately." "Privately? Like you've been privately sleeping with this snake for the past 4 months?" 4 months. Not the 6 weeks I'd suspected, but 4 months of lies. 4 months of coming home to me every night after being with him. 4 months of playing the loving wife while planning her exit strategy. I pushed through the crowd and walked into the gym, my surgical scars protesting with every step. The 3 of them turned to look at me, and I saw my reflection in their faces. The wronged husband, arriving just in time for the finale. "Brandon," Tasha whispered, her voice broken. "I can explain." "Explain what? That you've been screwing Derek for 4 months? That you've been spending his money while I've been paying our bills? That you've been lying to my face every single day?" Derek straightened his shoulders, trying to reclaim some authority. "Brandon, this is between adults. We can work this out." I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "Adults? You're a middle-aged man who preys on married women, and she's a cheating wife who sold herself for designer workout clothes. Where exactly do you see adults in this situation?" "Don't talk about her like that," Derek said, stepping forward. "You don't understand what she's been going through, living with someone who doesn't appreciate." The punch came from somewhere deep in my chest, powered by months of humiliation and betrayal. My fist connected with Derek's jaw and sent him stumbling backward into a rack of dumbbells. Pain exploded through my surgical site, but it felt good, clean, like lancing an infected wound. "Brandon, stop!" Tasha screamed, but I was already advancing on Derek, who was struggling to get back to his feet. "You want to finish that sentence?" I asked. "You want to tell me more about what my wife needs that I can't provide?" Derek wiped his lip, his eyes darting toward the crowd of witnesses pressed against the windows. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "You're right," I replied. "It's not." Elaine was already on her phone, presumably calling her divorce attorney. Tasha was sobbing into her hands, her perfect facade finally cracking. And Derek was looking at me with the kind of hatred that comes from having your dirty secrets exposed in front of half the town. I walked out of that gym knowing I'd crossed a line I could never uncross. The old Brandon, the by-the-book cop who believed in justice and playing fair, was gone. In his place was someone harder, colder, someone willing to destroy lives to get what he wanted. And what I wanted was to watch them all burn. But as I drove home, my knuckles throbbing and my scars aching, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still missing something important. The confrontation had been too easy, too public. Jenna Morrison was still out there somewhere, pulling strings I couldn't see. The real game was just beginning. 3 days after the gym incident, I was served with a restraining order and a lawsuit for assault and harassment. Derek's lawyer was expensive and thorough, painting me as an unstable ex-cop with violent tendencies and a history of stalking behavior. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent 15 years putting criminals behind bars, and now I was being treated like one of them. But Derek had made a crucial mistake. He'd underestimated how much I'd learned about patience and long-term planning during my years on the force. The lawsuit was a reaction, an emotional response to being humiliated in public. It showed his hand and revealed his weaknesses. Victor found me at home that evening, sitting on my porch with a beer and a stack of legal documents. "You look like shit," he said, settling into the chair beside me. "I feel worse, but I've got good news and bad news." "Give me the bad news first." Derek's lawsuit is solid. His lawyer has witness statements, security footage from the gym, and documentation of the property damage to his car. I'm probably going to lose. "And the good news?" I smiled for the first time in days. While he was focused on building his legal case, I was building something better. "Tell me, Vic, what do you know about the annual lobster festival?" Victor raised an eyebrow. "It's this weekend. Biggest event of the year. Whole town turns out." "Why?" "Because Derek is scheduled to give the opening speech as this year's business sponsor, and I'm going to make sure it's a speech nobody forgets." I'd spent the past 3 days working with a contact from my police days, a tech specialist who owed me a favor from a case we'd worked together. The plan was simple, elegant, and completely legal, which made it all the more satisfying. The Lobster Festival was held every year at the marina, transforming the working waterfront into a carnival of food booths, live music, and small-town pride. Families came from 3 counties away to eat lobster rolls and watch the sunset over the water. Derek's opening speech was scheduled for 7 p.m., right as the crowd would be at its largest. He'd be standing on the main stage with a microphone and a captive audience of nearly 2,000 people. I arrived early, positioning myself near the back of the crowd where I could see everything but remain inconspicuous. Tasha was there too, standing off to the side with Jenna Morrison, both of them looking nervous and whispering urgently to each other. Derek took the stage right on schedule, resplendent in a tailored suit that probably cost more than most people in the audience made in a month. He launched into his prepared remarks about community spirit and economic development, his voice carrying clearly through the sound system. That's when I gave Victor the signal. The first image appeared on the large screen behind Derek just as he was talking about the importance of family values. It was one of the photos Victor had taken, Derek and Tasha kissing on his dock, her gym bag clearly visible in the background. The crowd's murmur started as a whisper and grew to a roar. Derek, oblivious to what was happening behind him, continued his speech until someone in the front row pointed at the screen. He turned around just as the second photo appeared, Tasha leaving his house at midnight, adjusting her clothes and looking around nervously. "What the hell?" Derek grabbed for the microphone, but the sound system was controlled from the tech booth, and my contact was making sure Derek's voice came through loud and clear. The third photo was the most damaging. Derek and Tasha in his bedroom window, silhouetted against the light, unmistakably intimate. "Turn it off," Derek shouted, but his words were being broadcast to 2,000 people who were now buzzing with excitement and outrage. I stepped forward, pushing through the crowd until I reached the base of the stage. "Having technical difficulties, Derek?" I called out, my voice carrying in the sudden silence. Every head in the crowd turned toward me, then back to Derek, then to the screen where a fourth photo had appeared, a bank statement showing the $30,000 Elaine had mentioned, with Derek's signature authorizing the transfers. "You snake!" Derek snarled, jumping down from the stage and advancing on me. "Careful," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Wouldn't want to assault someone in front of all these witnesses." Derek stopped just out of arm's reach, his face purple with rage. "You think this is over? You think ruining my reputation is going to fix your marriage?" "My marriage was over the moment my wife decided to become a whore," I replied, the words cutting through the crowd noise like a knife. "But your marriage, your business, your standing in this community, that's all ending tonight." I could see Elaine Leland pushing through the crowd, her face a mask of cold fury. Behind her were several men I recognized as Derek's business partners, all of them looking like they wanted to be anywhere else in the world. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced, turning to address the crowd directly. "Let me introduce you to Derek Leland, your business sponsor and community leader, the man who's been stealing from his own company to pay for his affair with my wife." The crowd erupted. Some people were shouting, others were taking pictures, and more than a few were calling for Derek to explain himself. The festival organizers were scrambling to cut power to the sound system, but the damage was already done. Derek lunged at me, his fists swinging wildly, but I was ready for him. I sidestepped his first punch and grabbed his wrist, using his momentum to send him sprawling into the nearest lobster tank with a tremendous splash. The crowd cheered as Derek surfaced, sputtering and covered in seawater and lobster shells. "That's for my marriage," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "and for thinking you were smarter than a cop." I turned to leave, but Tasha was suddenly in front of me, tears streaming down her face. "Brandon, please," she sobbed. "I made a mistake, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can't fix anything," I said quietly. "Because there's nothing left to fix. You destroyed our marriage the first time you spread your legs for him, and now the whole town knows what kind of woman you really are." She slapped me then, hard enough to snap my head to the side. The crowd gasped, but I just smiled. "Feel better?" I asked. Before she could answer, I walked away, pushing through the crowd toward the parking lot. Behind me, I could hear Derek shouting threats and Tasha sobbing, but I didn't look back. I'd gotten what I came for. Complete and total victory. But as I reached my car, I found Jenna Morrison waiting for me, leaning against the driver's side door with her arms crossed. "Quite a show," she said. "Very thorough, very public, very much like the kind of thing a cop would do." "Get away from my car, Jenna." "I don't think so. You see, Brandon, you've been so focused on Derek and Tasha that you missed the real game. This was never about their affair. This was about destroying you, and you just gave me everything I needed to finish the job." She held up her phone, and I could see she'd been recording everything. My confrontation with Derek, my cruel words to Tasha, the cheering crowd as I humiliated them both. Assault, harassment, public humiliation, and now I have video evidence of you admitting to orchestrating the entire thing. Derek's lawsuit was just the beginning. By the time I'm done with you, you'll lose your house, your business, and any chance of rebuilding your life. I stared at her for a long moment, then started laughing. "What's so funny?" she demanded. "You think you're the only one who's been planning ahead," I said, pulling out my own phone. "Smile, Jenna. You're on camera, too." Her face went white as I played back the recording I'd been making since she approached my car. Every word of her confession, her admission that she'd orchestrated the affair as revenge against me, her threat to commit perjury in Derek's lawsuit. "You see, Jenna, the difference between you and me is that I learned from my mistakes. I was a good cop once, but good cops don't always win. Bad cops, on the other hand, bad cops who are willing to play dirty and think 3 moves ahead, they get results." I got in my car and rolled down the window. "Enjoy explaining to Derek how his affair was just part of your revenge scheme. Enjoy explaining to the police why you were conspiring to commit perjury, and enjoy explaining to this town why you destroyed 3 marriages just to get back at the cop who arrested you for dealing drugs to kids." I drove away, leaving her standing in the parking lot with her mouth open and her phone still recording nothing but empty air. 3 weeks later, Derek's business collapsed when his partners discovered the missing money. Elaine took him for everything in the divorce, including the lakeside house. Tasha moved back in with her parents after losing all her clients and her gym membership, and Jenna Morrison was arrested for conspiracy and perjury, just like I'd promised. As for me, I sold the house, closed the security business, and bought a cabin up north where nobody knows my name or my story. I've got enough money to last a few years and enough solitude to figure out who I want to be now that I'm not pretending to be a good man anymore. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but they're wrong. The best revenge is served with a smile, in front of everyone you know, with no possibility of appeal or redemption. I used to be the good guy, the one who believed in justice and playing by the rules. But good guys finish last, and I was tired of losing. Turns out the villain gets the better lines and the last laugh.